When I first started my career, I never really thought about access to technology or this idea of accessibility. I just figured everyone in the world was more or less like me, that I can access technology really easily. I have access to the internet, I have a mobile phone, no problem. More or less everybody else is kind of like that. I never realized that there were different groups of people that didn't have the same levels of access to technology than I did, or that didn't have the same kinds of digital skills that I did. And in some ways, it was kind of a selfish way of looking at other people. I just kind of figured that, oh, they don't have technology because they don't want technology, or they don't need technology. And at the time, this was back in the 1990s, there's some truth to that. You know, in the 90s, tech was still more or less the responsibility or the domain of tech geeks. Now we have a little bit different world around us. We have a little bit different way of interacting with our careers and our jobs and our educational systems. And those interactions demand that we have access to technology. I would argue that there's not a school, there's not a workplace that you could find that doesn't use tech, even in a small way in those spaces. And so it's not an option to use tech if you're a tech geek and not use tech if you're not a tech geek. It's really a demand that we've placed on all of society, that everyone must use technology in some way or shape or form, whether it's to interact online with your friends and family members, whether it's to use it in your workplace, whatever that job might be, or whether it's to use it in your education. So you're getting access to your basic fundamental right to education, but you have to do it through technology. And so I think this is so important for us to kind of pick apart and really think critically about it, because it's only been for me the last few years that I've really started to kind of think critically about who has access to technology and who does not, and what sort of barriers do those groups experience when they try to access technology. It's kind of hard for us to imagine sometimes, because we look around ourselves and we just see tech everywhere. We see people on the bus or on the train or in our homes, and they're using technology all the time. And so it's hard to kind of get across this threshold to imagine that, well, maybe the world out there is a different place than it is in my family, or it is in the train that I'm on, or the bus that I'm on, or it even is in my workplace. Maybe there are groups of people, very large groups of people, who don't have those same opportunities to use technology, to learn about technology, to access technology as I do, or as the people in my life do. So when we start thinking about these groups of people, access to technology takes on a whole new dimension, because what we're really talking about here is that there are groups of people who are just fundamentally disadvantaged when it comes to participating in the world around them. If you don't have internet access and you're trying to get a job, or you don't have a computer and you're trying to go to college, it can be a huge barrier to being able to access the basics of life, whether it's getting a job or getting an education. And I think what we've found through research and a lot of ways of creating new knowledge and trying to understand this problem, really picking this problem apart, what we've essentially found is that these groups can kind of be divided along lines that you would almost expect. And that's kind of scary, because now we're saying, okay, we know this is a problem, we kind of anticipated this problem, and the reality is, the way research shows, this problem really does exist. And so it exists in relation to gender. So women and girls and men and boys have different levels of access to technology, people with and without disabilities, older persons, younger persons, people who live in urban and rural areas. All of these are separators for people who are able to easily access technology and people who can't access technology, or who experience significant limitations when it comes to accessing technology. And this can be everything. So it can be basic internet access, high-speed broadband internet access, which again is kind of fundamental to our ability to get educated and get a job. And it can come down to things like having access to a mobile phone, having access to a computer, or just having access to basic kind of health services, health technologies. So it's important for us in our lives, if you have access to technology and you pick up technology and use it relatively easily, to take a step back. start thinking about those groups of people in the world around us, even our neighbors maybe, who may not have the same levels of access to technology that we have. Start thinking about, what does it mean in your life if you weren't able to use a mobile phone because you didn't understand how to use it or you couldn't learn how to use it? And how that would affect your daily life. And if you're one of the many, many, many people out there who aren't able to access technology on an equal basis as someone like me, then I think it's critically important that your voices are heard, that you kind of rise up and demand, because access to technology is not an option anymore. We can't assume that a computer is just either part of your daily life or not, and if it's not, who cares? It's really a right that we all kind of share when it comes to participating in the world around us.